So I've been working on a social media scheduler app concept for about 2 years on and off now, and it has been a wild ride. It's gone well, it's gone bad. There's times where I haven't worked on it because I've been working on other projects, or work got busy, or school got busy, or my business got busy. There's just a lot of things that kind of push this application to the side, but it's been something that I will constantly work on and make up to a point where it actually will affect my life one day, hopefully soon. It all started about 5 or 6 years ago. I had seen an app online called Later, and essentially it was an Instagram social media scheduler. It was cool because I was able to put up all my content that I wanted to do, and I liked the fact that I could see everything and schedule it all. It was great. But I knew that it could be better, and there were two things that were very important to me if I wanted to make this something that I was going to stick with using. The first thing is that I wanted to have it work with all platforms that I care about, at least. It would be things like YouTube, it would be LinkedIn, it would be Twitter, it would be Instagram, it would be TikTok, things like that, right? Although I'm not really interested in Twitter and TikTok, I still feel like as if they are big enough platforms where if I wanted to just automate something and just push something out there, I wouldn't even need to be on those platforms, and it could just synchronize and push out to every place. And so for me, that was a big deal. The second thing that was important is I wanted to know if it was possible to do this locally, or at least be able to have ownership over all of my assets and all of my things. If they're under my server or my computer or my devices, and they're able to communicate with one another to make some sort of middleman handler that can then send up the information at an automated time, I thought that was cool, because then you don't need a middleman for this at all, and it would be free. And so that would be awesome, because Later I think was charging like $10 or something like that for this service, and it doesn't do every single platform. And so because of this, I figured this would be something that would be great to do. However, I had been so busy with other projects, and so it's been an on and off fluctuation. When I first started trying this out, I came up with the idea that I was going to try two projects. One was going to be a basic Python version of the social media scheduler, because it's super easier. I can easily just at least test, crash and burn, and try out some concepts before I'd actually move to anything that I actually wanted. And then while I'm working on that, I figured the best thing to do is try to learn more about Dart and Flutter, because I figured that since they are known for being something where I can make a project and it can actually work against multiple different targets, I figured that would be the best thing for this project moving forward. And as I'm looking into this project, the Python side was kind of going well, but the Dart side was kind of just hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And I started to realize that Dart may not be the best for this. Dart is good at making projects where you may not want to have so much of the underlying abilities and features that the actual target may have. It's not like Dart actually knows how to do everything that is necessary on all the latest Androids and all the latest iOSs and all the latest operating systems in particular. So if you needed something specialized, it's actually better to use a language or SDK or anything that is actually more meant for that target in particular. So for example, if I needed something more geared toward iOS, and it's only in the features that I'm looking for to add into my app is really on iOS only, the best thing to use would be something called Swift or Xcode. It's like the latest Apple software development to basically build out Apple products, right? And that's going to usually have way more robust information and way more features for actually building out a target for just that platform comparatively to something like Dart. And when I kept running across a couple of the different concepts I wanted, specifically more of the background, because I want this to run in the background of your phone to make sure that the schedule is up to date, X, Y, and Z, that all of those aspects essentially weren't something I could find in Dart, or it seemed like as if it was a lot harder to do. And so it basically made it so that that project or that side became stale for a while. Back on the Python side, the first part of this was actually going well. When I first started this off, I started writing out a handler that can basically make out the API requests for Instagram, for Facebook, For Twitter, I would test those out. They were pretty simple. And I used my own API keys to be able to communicate with the platforms that I want. And then I hooked it up to a lambda function so that therefore every single day at a specific time, it would go into a specific folder based on the specific date and then publish that content for me. So the only thing I had to do was just upload out the information over to AWS. Once it's uploaded into like an S3 storage bucket, it would then handle out that information for me. And I thought that was pretty good. It was cool. I liked it. But the main thing I figured and I realized about doing this setup is that this isn't going to be really like well done as far as open source. It was something that required still a lot on the end user side. For one, a user would actually have to go and create out their own API keys. If they have no clue what they're doing at all, this probably isn't going to be as enticing to them as something that is simple where they could pay $10 to kind of have a better UI that kind of handles things, where if they needed access to someone's account, they'd probably just have an OAuth screen come up to consent. Therefore, they could have like a rotating authentication token. I knew that this needed to be worked on in a better way that was more open for people who may not really be coding to at least give this a shot. But then this leads me back to the problem I was having with Dart. If I can't be able to really have it easy to kind of work on the application through Dart, then I'm going to have to kind of scratch the whole idea of Dart and kind of work on this in something else. So I started thinking to myself again, do I really want to make something where I make two targets, like something for iOS and Android? Or do I want to then like find something else, maybe React Native? And I basically decided on React Native simply because of the fact that I didn't want to pay $500+ for a Mac just so that I can be able to use Xcode or Xswift or whatever they call it, just so that I could have an environment to develop with Mac on. I figured that that's just way too much just for a side project. So I'm not doing that. And I figured to myself the best thing to do at this point is React Native. And this is when I start deciding that I'm going to then make meetups for this. I go to meetup.com. I essentially take over an kind of old meetup group that was around. And then from that, I start making these team meetings or these Zoom meetings where people are able to come in, put their 2 cents in, watch me struggle, watch me kind of do this. And it was actually very helpful because it kept me having to constantly work on it. It kept me having a fixed schedule because it was very hard. I had to do a lot of other projects that were kind of more important in paying. And so it's very easy to kind of push this to the side. Having other people there to kind of cheer me on or tell me of things to do or ideas kind of kept it moving, and it helped out a lot last year. So with this, I basically rehauled everything. Within the year 2024, I switched up how the Python is to basically making a tkinter GUI application where it's just a schedule calendar app. It also connects to a SQLite 3 database that can then track where your content is on your actual computer. And so then you can basically add in content like a post, some audio or some video or whatever content you want. You'll then have in accounts that you want added to your account. So like you'll have a main account. This main account, you can add social media accounts to it, right? So you can then, let's say, go to LinkedIn, go through the OAuth process for LinkedIn, and then afterward, it will store that rotating token into the database, and then use that token to basically then try, when the schedule happens, to then push your content out, right? And this was pretty good. It was kind of clunky, but it was pretty good. Over the course of months, there was a lot of change and a lot of things that were done, but essentially we got it up and working pretty well, where the scheduler works, the handler works, the background process works, and it's a pretty good exe application that you could download right now in my description below in this video, right? So this was something where I finally was making some progress. Still needs work, but there's a lot of progress on that side. After we kind of get most of that stuff done, where it's kind of fleshed out, where other people can now take a whack at it, now we decided pretty much about 7 to 8 months ago to start really working now on the React Native side. This part was where things took a lot longer. It was a lot harder to figure out things as far as what I was going to do. But essentially we started off with just having an app.typescript file We would build out what the scheduler looked like, the calendar app. We made a couple different modals, such as the login screen, such as being able to choose a social media provider, and then also having that information as far as the token that you receive from your OAuth stored in a database. What's cool about this is that I could actually use the same database schema of using SQLite 3 on Android. So this is perfect for my testing, and was able to basically move all of the same type of schema over to the actual phone version of the app. After doing that, having the GUI for the scheduler working, the login working, being able to keep track of the actual social media providers that you added in, create the CRUD for the posts so that you can create, read, update, and delete content, and you can see it in the scheduler. So everything is looking pretty good right now. And as we're moving along, I'm hoping to fully finish this out this year. Currently where we are is that I want to basically work on the background process. It's the same reason that I basically left Dart to begin with, because I knew React Native could do this. After doing a bunch of testing and on a bunch of changes, when it came down to the manifest, when it came down to my Gradle batch files, I finally was able to get some sort of testing for doing a background fetch, and it works, but there are limitations with not just the Android side, but also the iOS side. You can't just make a background process that just lives on the actual phone, even when you close the app like that. You can, but it's not the way that you would like it to be, if that makes sense. Like, if I wanted to schedule something once an hour, I can't just schedule it once an hour and it just works at that time whenever I want. I think for iPhone it's even worse or something like that. It just does it whenever it wants. And Android is kind of the same. So the Android background itself will decide when it wants to trigger that schedule. And it will be within a 15-minute interval time of whenever you actually wanted it fired. So that's an important thing, because now it's not like as if I can have a scheduler that says, what time do you want this scheduled? And you say this particular time, and then it does it. The only way that would happen is if I therefore had a server somewhere else where it was managing it. But again, I don't want something else or some sort of middleman or some sort of third thing involved with someone's social media content. I want all their stuff contained with them. So this is a big change for me that I now have to deal with. After working on that, I also want to make sure that alerts work, so that therefore if a schedule gets fired for content, it will show up on your phone at the top and show you that, hey, this has been fired. Check out like what it looks like on these platforms, that type of thing. And once that is pretty much done, and I know that those things can be executed and fired, the next thing would then be to add in the API calls to actually make the triggers. I've done it in Python before numerous times, so I have the code, but I didn't write it yet because I want to make sure that the background process works. I could try to do some testing with it, but I figured it'd be a waste of time if the background process doesn't work, because then I'm going to have to figure out another way to handle actual scheduled triggers on a person's device. So this is where I am currently right now. I'm going to make periodic videos on this. And if you're interested in joining this at all, this project, I have meetups every single week. Go down to the description below where you can be able to check out more on the next time we're going to be working on this on Zoom or on Twitch or on whatever platform. And from there, if you guys liked this video, please leave a thumbs up. And also, if you're interested, please subscribe. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And other than that, I hope the rest of your day goes well, everyone. Peace.